Believe it or not, I shot this to look like a Netflix documentary interview in a spare bedroom in my house with no crew. Because I wanted to prove to solo creators that you could get that Netflix-style interview look using just a few pieces of gear and a teleprompter tray. No film crew or interviewer needed, just you and Lance.
Get back here, Lance. Stay in your spot, Lance. That's a good boy.
So if you've got a YouTube channel or a podcast, you're not going to believe how easy this setup is. What do you say we get going step by step? Hey, welcome to PSS. I'm Steven, and this is Get Creative, where every Wednesday we unpack and take a look at how accessible the top creative media tools have become, and how now ordinary Joe Schmoes can create Netflix-level content solo at home. That's what I'm here to help you do, so if you're ready to level up, come hang out with me every Wednesday. So I've been dying to try out this shot or this setup for a really long time. It's called the Rembrandt Shot, getting its name, of course, from the famous painter. It has a dramatic look by having a contrast on our subject's face of dark and light, with a famous triangle under the dark side of the face right here. Rembrandt lighting is a way of lighting the face so that one side of the face is mostly in shadow, except for a small triangle of light under the eye on the cheek. This triangle is the Rembrandt signature, named after the painter who used this style in his portraits. Why would you use this? Because it creates depth and mood and keeps the face readable but sculpted, and it makes interviews look cinematic and professional. But how do we set it up? Step 1 is to position the light. Place your key light at about 45 degrees to the side of your subject's face. Step 2 is to raise the light slightly above their eye level and angle it downward. Step 3 is to adjust shadows. Look for a triangle of light under the far eye. Step 4 is fine-tune the angle. If the triangle is too big or missing, move the light closer or higher. And step 5 is keep that mood. Don't overfill the shadows. Let that contrast give shape to the face. And look at this little diagram I drew. It's easy. The light comes from a side above angle. The bright side of the face is well lit. The dark side still has a little triangle of light. And speaking of documentary style, this famous director, Errol Morris, invented something called the Interrotron, which was an innovative device that put the interviewer's face on a teleprompter screen so that the person being interviewed could stare through the barrel of the camera, make eye contact with the camera, while actually making eye contact with the person who is interviewing them. Senior Morris invented this in the early 1990s. So this was before YouTube and before it was custom to see our creators making eye contact with us, or as filmmakers say, breaking the fourth wall. Nowadays, it's a lot easier to create an Interrotron by just using a nifty teleprompter like the Elgato teleprompter. So a common Interrotron multicam setup, the A camera is your main shot and you're staring down the barrel looking into the lens. The cam B would be a secondary off-angle side shot, and this captures a profile-ish view. Why use both? Because the Interrotron gives intimacy with your A cam, that direct eye contact, feels personal and trustworthy. And then the B cam gives context and cinematic depth. A little off axis makes the subject feel more observed and adds variety for cutting. When you cut between these two, it creates a dynamic flow without jarring the viewer, and it also gives you coverage in case you want to trim lines, hide cuts, or shift tone mid-segment. So if you're faking an Interrotron shot, lock that A cam with the teleprompter on a mid shot, and then set your B cam slightly off to the side on a tripod. Even 30 degrees is enough. And either use a tighter crop or change the angle and keep it wider for visual contrast. Even just these two shots can elevate your video quality massively. Netflix and Masterclass do this. Masterclass often uses an A cam with a teleprompter for clean direct access and a B cam for a slightly side angle or over the shoulder. And Netflix documentaries usually don't have the person looking down the barrel. They'll just look slightly off camera, but they will mix it sometimes with this Interrotron when the subject is telling a direct message, or for the trailer, they will speak to a lens-mounted Interrotron. Take, for example, the popular Bad Influence documentary trending on Netflix now. Look at this exact two-shot setup from that documentary. Do you see that little triangle of light under the darker side of her face? While setting up the shot will be a lot easier if you have someone around to help you, a co-host, a child, a wife. But I wanted to prove that you could do it alone, so that's why my assistant, Lance,
Who is more real to me than my children?
helped me to get all of this set up. Okay, so the first step is to decide where you're gonna sit or where your talent is gonna sit, and then ask Lance if he can help you. I think we are going to sit over in about this area right here. We'll take advantage of looking at these bookshelves over here in one of the shots, and then we'll just kind of have this central place for our talent or for yourself to sit. And this is where Lance comes in handy. So I can sit sort of comfortably as I'm going to in my chair, and then just raise Lance up until he is my height. And now I can more easily set up my scene. Back the chair up a little bit from where I think it's gonna be, and I'm gonna have Lance looking straight forward toward the camera, and we're good to go. Pretty easy first step, right? And what I love so much about the Rembrandt shot is it's really a challenge to see if you can get away with just using one key light on your subject. This makes it simple, more affordable, and something that you can DIY yourself. Now, of course, on production sets and in photography studios, they will also use reflection panels just to kind of balance out the light or send a little bit more light to that dark side of the face. Of course, you could always use an LED panel, light with a softbox, turn the light really low just to give yourself a little fill light. But really the Rembrandtness of the shot is to really see how dramatic we can get with the light and the dark contrast. So that's really fun because before we even set up cameras or anything else, the next step is to set up the light and to create that Rembrandt effect. Should we do it? So for this, I'm going to use the Amaran 100D with a parabolic softbox and this grid pattern in front of the softbox. This makes the light more directional and is really going to help with the Rembrandt effect, and it also keeps it very soft and diffused. And perhaps it would be fun and most effective to really see the shadows to get all the other lights in this area, or most of the lights in this area, turned off. So we're going to go dark. And here is where it's good to know where you do intend on setting up the cameras, because we typically want to shoot on the dark side of our subject's face. So what do you want to be in the background of your shot? And let's make sure that the key light is hitting the opposing shot of the person's face. Let's take a look at what I mean. So in this case, I really want to get these shelves over here in the shot behind me. So I'm going to want my key light to be on this side of Lance's face.
We're going dark. Spooky.
We won't go completely dark yet because I do want you to see what we're doing with the light here on Lance. And there we go. All right, and we're already off to a very good start right off the bat. As you can see, we already have some serious contrast going on. We can sort of turn Lance one way or the other, but when he's looking straight on or even off to the little side, we already have that famous Rembrandt triangle. So you can see there's really not rocket science to it. It's pretty easy to get this effect. But here we can now continue to experiment with the angle and the distance and the intensity of the light to get it just right. And then we can start popping back on the lights in the background to maybe make it a little less dramatic and bring in some of the color in the objects in the room to tell the story of our shot. So I'm gonna try angling this down a little bit more. That's pretty nice. Angling it down, you'll see now a little bit more. The shadow of the nose cuts down and angles down even more, giving us even more of this triangle. So it really is angled down quite a bit. Now you'll notice as I come closer, if I get too close, it flattens the effect a little bit too much and maybe gets a little bit too spotty and too bright. But many people will experiment with getting very close and then lessening the intensity of the light by just turning the light down itself. However, you will have to take into account that we're gonna have some other shots and we don't want the light to show up in our other camera shots as well. Now I'll have to describe what I'm doing since you can't see, but the light is all the way to Lance's side here. As I start to pull around and move the light more towards the front of his face, you'll see that if I get directly to the front of his face, we have a flat light and the shadows of the nose kind of disappear. As we go more to the right, the shadows of Lance's nose start to show up on his face and get more dramatic. Right about there, now we have that famous triangle showing up under the side of his face. And I think that is really beautiful. So now I can flip this around, maybe even come closer with the camera. Let's take a look at our talent in Lance's position. I have that triangle right there. Now here is where you really might want to fill this area in a little bit. We still get this cool dramatic effect, but we fill this in. Sometimes that can happen just naturally with the fill lights of the room when we turn them back on, or the room light, or the ambient light, you could say. But you can also make it happen with the reflector panel, and you could just use a white poster board and somehow prop the white poster board down here, sort of opposing your key light, and that will blast some light reflection back on this side of my face, which will lighten those shadows. Now, I'm on a 20mm lens right now for this illustration, so this isn't the lens that I'm gonna be using for my shot. But now we have the basic key light set up, and how easy was that? My favorite part about the Rembrandt shot is it's so easy and fun and effective. But let's see what happens when we crank back up some fill lights if we like the way that the room is looking. Here's the room light. I want to make sure that none of my overhead room light is actually coming down onto our talent. Woo, but I'm blind because I just stared at the room light. But already this is a pretty cool look. Now, one of the real refined things that documentary filmmakers are looking for is an eye light. And they usually achieve an eye light with this setup by having the talent kind of look toward the key light. So if I were to have a teleprompter or something I'm reading, or if somebody was interviewing me, I would want them between the camera and the key light. So I'm looking toward the key light a little bit just off camera. And that would be sort of your typical documentary. As I look off axis, I don't look directly down the barrel. But we're gonna take a look look at the looking down the barrel setup, which I forgot what they call it. We'll get back to that. Hey, sorry to interrupt, but trust me, this is worth it. If you're looking to build a pro-level video podcast studio without all the guesswork and complicated gear decisions, meet our brand new Studio Blueprint Builder. We're talking about an interactive drag and drop tool that helps you map out your exact room dimensions and customize our ready-made Canva templates to fit your space perfectly. We'll guide you through the best camera, lighting, and microphone choices for your unique layout, complete with curated Amazon links so you can shop confidently without the guesswork. This is the exact process we use to set up studios for top-tier shows, and now you can do it too. So what do you say? You ready to build your studio? Head over to pss.media/shop and build your dream studio. Let's get you looking and sounding pro. All right, now back to the show. Okay, so for our first camera setup, we are gonna use the Sony FX30, but even more important than the camera is the lens. And so for this, we're gonna use the Sony G Master 50mm lens. This is a beaut. We're gonna wanna keep the aperture all the way open, keep the settings in the manual settings, and really dial in some cool professional Sony settings on our camera. I have a video here on the channel where I dive into the Sony camera settings, and I will leave a link for that in the description, so make sure you subscribe. So let's pop the lens on this puppy. This puppy's gonna need a dummy battery. I don't wanna be charging batteries. Now, you will notice, I have not yet notched out a little notch on the door of this camera, and so it actually won't close all the way with the dummy battery. That's okay, you can just leave it open, but if you have a Dremel, you can notch a little hole so the cable of the dummy battery will hang out of the camera better.
That's a nice little tip, Steven. Thank you.
I don't know why he has to do those voices. It's the Jim Gaffigan.
There's a little Jim Gaffigan inside all of us.
Okay, so we got the dummy battery, but we're gonna need to plug this thing in.
Stop following me.
And here's where we're gonna need to employ the use of a field monitor so that we could really see what this camera sees as we get the shot set up perfect. So I'll grab a little field monitor, we'll put it here. We could use this field monitor for all of the cameras that we're gonna set up. And like I said, I really recommend not overdoing it at first. 2 cameras is plenty, but I might try to sneak in a 3rd one. But really the focus of this video is to show you how to use a 2-camera DIY setup. So now we can click this puppy on, but probably gonna have to do its little pixel mapping that it does. And that requires leaving the lens cap on it for a moment while it does the pixel mapping. Looks like it's done. Beautiful. Okay. So now we can see what the camera sees. And this becomes a real necessity when you're setting up a shot, especially by yourself. And here I'm looking for a rule of thirds inspired classic documentary style shot where we'll see our subject from about the waist up, and we'll have one of our subject's eye basically on one of those points of interest in that rule of thirds grid. Now on the Sony cameras, you can actually go into the settings and set up a rule of thirds grid. Let me show you. Okay, so I don't know what I was thinking. I totally put the light on the wrong side. I said that I wanted to see the shelves, right? Which means the light needs to come from the side you want to see, not on the other side. I'm sorry, I'm only human.
Right.
But now that I've got that set up, I also realized a flaw in my method, and that is actually to, before even really worrying too much about the light and getting the light really precise, instead we really need to arrange our subject with the background and arrange the pieces and everything like we want. And I chose actually with the 50mm lens, especially on the FX30, which has a crop sensor, which really turns the 50mm into more like 70mm. I decided to go with that for my side angle, and I got a really cool shot. You wanna go look at it?
Let's go look. Come on, don't be afraid.
Pretty cool, right? And it showed me the little zebra lines there, which shows me my exposure and if I'm overexposing. Notice how I lower the shutter speed, those lines get huge and they're everywhere. But this lets you get the exposure just right. Sometimes just a little bit of overexposure along the edges of the face is just fine, but nothing more than that. Here now I could also adjust and move objects around so it looks good. And remember I mentioned there is a rule of thirds grid that we can access in the Sony camera menus. So just press the menu button. And in this first category here, the picture of the camera, if you get into that menu and go down to number 10, you'll see shooting display. And then we have grid line display. You can push the over button here to go into this sub menu of the menu and just turn it on. And right now it's set to rule of thirds grid. You do have a few different options, the square grid and the diagonal plus square grid, but the rule of thirds is the one it defaults as. Now when I get out of the menu, you see I have this cool grid. And without even knowing it, I put Lance's eye almost directly on that point of interest right there, which is really cool. And since Lance is over to the right side, I'm probably gonna keep Lance to the right side in my other camera. And now now for the primary camera, or for camera A. And for this, we're actually gonna use a 35mm lens, which perhaps isn't as high as a focal length as you might wanna use for a primary shot, because the higher the focal length, the more of a blurry background you get. But the hack with this shot is we are going to attach a teleprompter to this lens. Notice this little ring here will actually screw onto the lens and is used with perhaps my favorite piece of equipment ever, the Elgato teleprompter. When you slide this little ring onto your lens, then the teleprompter will actually slide down onto the lens itself, and it's light enough that the lens can actually hold the weight of this puppy. Now, if you wanted to use this teleprompter off to the side of the camera, you could still do that. You just have to cover the back of the teleprompter. And then this teleprompter has all of these support adjustments here, as you can see. So you could just put this on a standalone tripod, place it right next to the camera. So I can just screw this then, like any other attachment that you have for lenses, right onto the lens, and then the teleprompter can slide right on. But like I said, you could also put the teleprompter screen right here. You would just have to cover the back so it's dark. And then this teleprompter will actually hook up to your computer. So you can use any number of teleprompter apps, you can use documents, you could use anything. So you could even do the Interrotron, which is a cool documentary style where they will actually put the face of the interviewer in a teleprompter so that the person being interviewed can stare into the eyes of the person they're interviewing, but also down the barrel of the camera. Now, before YouTube and content creators, this was a really unique and really awesome technique. But nowadays we're used to our creators staring directly down the barrel of the lens at us. And that's what I want to explore in this video. So that's the technique that we're gonna use. And you can be the judge of how you like it. Slid right on there. It's a beautiful baby. This USB cable here now plugs into your computer, and this monitor here on the teleprompter works as a secondary monitor, so anything that you can see on your computer, you can see through this teleprompter screen.
And don't worry, hombre. I'll leave the link for this puppy in the description below. Check that description.
Back to our shot over here. Check out how fun this rule of thirds grid is here as well. You can see now I can move things around, and you can see that interest point that we see anytime a line intersects on our rule of thirds is really going to be nice if we can put that right center on one of Lance's eyes. And in this shot, what's even cooler is now I can make these barn doors behind Lance actually be right on the edge of that rule of thirds as well. What's cool about putting the eye there on one of those interest points is it gives a nice amount of headroom. Sometimes you can cheat it a little bit and give a little less headroom and a little bit more body, and it'll still have a nice look, even if one of those eyes isn't directly on one of those rule of thirds points. This is something you can adjust to taste. And now I may want to come check where the guitar and some of the other objects are in my shot over here, my shot number 2, and see if I can get away with moving that guitar and moving some of those objects so that they look better in my other shot. I think we could stand to see that guitar a little bit more in this shot, and it would tell the story of Lance a little bit better. Also, the tree that's directly behind him, maybe we can move that more over into the barn doors. So let's see what we could do with that. Ah, that's much better. Now the tree is in a better view, we can see the guitar, and our primary shot is looking pretty awesome. Over here, our secondary shot, we can double check that those moves didn't ruin or compromise our shot over here. Now we have a really cool secondary shot as well too. So this is pretty amazing, and if you've been around the channel and you've seen some other setups that I've explored, this setup is actually very simple, but it does kind of require some dancing and some moving, and there isn't necessarily a correct or a proper order of operations. Usually though, as a rule of thumb with any kind of shot, I always like to get my camera set up first so that I can kind of see what I want to appear in the background with the focal length or the lens that I've chosen. But sweet, homie, home slice.
What do you think, home skillet?
I think it's time that we start doing the dance and dialing in this light perfect on Lance. We'll get it dark, we'll get it intimate, we'll adjust some fine-tuned settings on the camera and get it just right. And then, hey, the big reveal. We'll go back to that shot again to finish off this video.
Don't laugh like that. It's really creepy when you laugh like that. I don't like it.
Okay, and now we just take our teleprompter cable and we hook it up to our computer. And watch how magic this is. We have a computer screen. And now, as I mentioned, you can use any app you want with the computer. I really like this Teleprompter app. That's actually what it's called, is the Teleprompter app. And here what you can do is actually slide it over to the teleprompter screen. It's a good idea to try to keep what's on your screen as black as possible so it doesn't create any glare in the lens. And then you can see through the teleprompter screen a little bit, and you can actually see where the lens is. So a little tip here to really keep your eye line on is to make the teleprompter app really just about the size of the lens. And you can adjust the margins in this app, but you're really just centralizing your teleprompter letters so they work like this. And then I'll just put that paragraph kind of right in the middle of the lens like that. And now when I read, I will be looking directly through the lens of the camera. And I can control all that here on my computer with my mouse, so I can easily stop it, go back in time. I can even pull my computer probably a little closer to me here because it's not really getting in the shot there. So this is great. I could also pull my monitor a little closer to me as well too. As you can see now, I can solo this. I can manage to do all of this myself. Pretty incredible stuff, right? And you can see even from this camera that the Rembrandt effect is looking pretty good on this guapote here. So that's it. You saw there was a lot of dancing, a lot of moving around. Obviously, it's going to be a lot easier for you if you have an assistant, your friend, your girlfriend, your wife, your kids. Get somebody to help you move some equipment around and you'll get there a lot quicker. It's a little tricky with Lance, getting him to be in the exact same position I'm in. So I had to move some things around and do a little dance. But overall, it was about an hour setup for me to get this set up. And had I not been talking to you, maybe I could have even gone a little bit quicker. The point here is that all of this is more accessible than it's ever been. Camera technology gets 4K recording for very affordable. You can pick up an affordable Sony camera, a good quality lens, and yeah, a good lens is still gonna cost you a stiff $1,200, $1,500, but it's worth it. That crisp lens, the blurred out background. Your podcast, your content, your YouTube channel is going to look like a Netflix show. All right, so should we see this in action? All right, here we are. What do you think? Here is the shot in action. And you will have noticed that I added a third camera down here as well, because it's become very popular recently with documentaries to really experiment with some wacky, weird shots. People are using what they call Dutch angles, or actually slanting the camera or having it be off center or off balance. Also some really wide angles that show the entire space. You can also experiment with actually showing your key light in the shot too. That can be fun. And since this is sort of a multi-camera shot, I thought, why not? But it's important to keep things simple. Make sure that you don't overwhelm yourself. And if you are just running this solo, you could experiment with the Rembrandt Shot with a single camera. There's no reason that you need to have two cameras to get going. I really love this because the LED technology with lights has become so affordable, and to have a light of this caliber at your home, even just a while ago, would not have been feasible. It would have cost a lot more and also take a lot more power and really get very hot. LED technology has made lighting so cool. We can have professional photography, studio, production quality lighting, and it doesn't even cost that much. I'll leave the link in the description. You'll be surprised how cheap it is.
Also, the Elgato teleprompter is truly a magic beast of equipment. What do you think? Is this a good Antonio Banderas?
Now, this setup here was not without its hair pulling. I actually did an entire take right here like I'm doing now without realizing that my camera B was entirely out of focus for the whole take. And so that's where I learned the lesson that it's a good idea to have a monitor for each camera going as you're recording, especially if you're doing it solo and you don't have anyone back behind the camera to check that you're actually in focus. I had the little screen flipped around on the camera, but it was so far away I could see that my framing was right, but I didn't see that I was out of focus, which was truly devastating. Lance! So what do you think? Was this setup a little too complex for you? Come on, you can handle more than that. In this video right here, we do a pro live stream setup for your podcast and YouTube channel. I cover everything from a camera switcher to an audio mixer, and we go live with Veronica's podcast and do the complete setup from lighting and everything you'll have to consider. It truly is a crash course in live streaming. Go check it out.